A high school teacher. How quaint. Margaret Blackwell's voice dripped with barely concealed disdain as she introduced me to her social circle at the Boston Symphony Orchestra's annual fundraising gala. Her daughter, Emma, my wife of 2 years, squeezed my hand supportively. I'm David Parker, 38, and for the past 5 years, I've been teaching physics at Boston Public High School. At least, that's what the Blackwell family thought. They had no idea I was also the majority shareholder of Winston University, their precious alma mater, through a series of private equity investments. David makes teaching fascinating for his students, Emma said proudly. His AP Physics class has the highest pass rate in the state. Yes, dear, but surely he has bigger ambitions. Margaret adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous habit when she was uncomfortable. The Blackwell name opens many doors in academia. If only she knew. I'd made my fortune in educational technology, selling my learning platform startup for $1.2 billion at age 33. I took the teaching job to understand modern education from the ground up before making my move into higher education reform. I love teaching, Mrs. Blackwell, I replied mildly. Every student deserves a chance at quality education. Emma's father, William Blackwell I, joined our group, bourbon in hand. Still molding young minds, Parker. His attempt at jovial condescension fell a little flat. You know, I could make a call to the Winston board. Get you something more, suitable to your marriage into the Blackwell family. I suppressed a smile, thinking about the board meeting I'd chaired just yesterday via video conference. Winston University was about to announce the most significant changes in its 200-year history, starting with its leadership. Thank you, sir, but I'm quite happy where I am. William's brother, Charles, snorted into his martini. Happy. Teaching physics to public school students when you could be at Winston. The university's been in our family's sphere for generations. That was part of the problem. The Blackwells and families like them had treated Winston as their personal fiefdom for too long. Merit had taken a backseat to legacy admissions and donor influence. That was about to change. I met Emma 3 years ago when I was genuinely teaching physics. She'd visited the school as part of her foundation's educational outreach program. The one genuine thing about the Blackwell family was Emma's desire to help others. She saw past my apparent position from the start, appreciating my passion for education reform. David believes education should be accessible to everyone, Emma said, challenging her uncle's tone. Not just those who can afford $70,000 a year in tuition. Noble sentiments, dear, Margaret sighed, but that's not how the world works. Winston's exclusivity is what makes it special. I thought about the announcement scheduled for Monday morning. Winston was about to become a very different kind of special. Speaking of Winston, William said, brightening, did you hear about Chancellor Richardson's retirement? Board's meeting Monday to announce his replacement. Word is they're considering Charles for the position. Charles puffed up importantly. Nothing's final, but I have been in discussions. My connections in the academic world. Weren't you rejected from Winston's doctoral program? Emma asked innocently. The family had carefully buried that particular piece of history. Charles's face reddened. A simple misunderstanding. Besides, running a university is about management, not academics. That attitude was exactly why Winston had fallen from 3rd to 15th in national rankings under the current leadership. Later that evening, as Emma and I drove home to our modest apartment, my real estate holdings were under a different LLC. She was thoughtful. You've been very quiet about the Winston changes, she said. Usually, you have strong opinions about higher education. I glanced at her. Would you support major changes at Winston, even if they upset your family? If they were the right changes, absolutely. She turned to face me. The university needs reform. It's becoming exactly what you fight against, an ivory tower that cares more about prestige than education. If she only knew how right she was. Monday's announcement wouldn't just change Winston. It would transform higher education in America. I'd spent 5 years preparing for this moment. After selling my educational technology company, EduTech Solutions, I could have retired to a private island. Instead, I went into the trenches of public education, teaching high school physics while quietly buying up Winston University stock through various shell companies. The Blackwells thought they controlled Winston through their social connections and donations. They didn't realize that actual ownership had been diluted through years of mismanagement. When I began buying shares, the university was vulnerable. Now I owned 58% of the voting rights. At Sunday dinner the next day, the Blackwell mansion buzzed with speculation about Monday's announcement. "I've already started planning the celebrations," Margaret told her social circle over roast duck, "once Charles is confirmed as chancellor." "Mother," Emma interrupted, "isn't it premature to plan celebrations?" "Darling, the board knows what's best for Winston. We've guided the university for generations." I focused on my food, thinking about the emergency board meeting I'd called for 7 a.m. Monday. Charles wasn't even on the shortlist for chancellor. "Parker," William called down the table, "surely you see now why we've been pushing you toward proper academia? A high school teacher can't appreciate the complexities of institutions like Winston." "Actually," I said carefully, "I find that teaching high school gives you a unique perspective on what's wrong with higher education." Charles laughed. "Wrong? Winston is the model other universities aspire to." "Is it?" I couldn't help asking. "Applications are down 20% over 5 years. Research funding has dropped by half. Graduate employment rates are falling." "Where did you get those numbers?" William demanded. "They're public record, if you look for them." The table fell silent. Emma gave me a curious look. "Well," Margaret said brightly, "all that will change under Charles's leadership." I checked my watch. 12 hours until the announcement. The next morning, I left early, telling Emma I had before-school tutoring. Instead, I headed to Winston's main campus, where the board was gathering for the 7 a.m. meeting. The boardroom was packed when I arrived. Many members had never met me in person. I usually attended virtually under the name DJ Parker. "Who are you?" demanded Ronald Spencer, one of William's oldest friends on the board. I took my place at the head of the table. "David Parker, majority shareholder and, as of this meeting, executive chairman of the board." The room erupted in chaos. "Impossible." "The Blackwells." "Who do you think you are?" I held up my hand. "The paperwork has been verified by University Council. I own 58% of voting shares, and our first order of business is appointing a new chancellor." "Now see here," Spencer sputtered, "Charles Blackwell is not qualified." I cut in. "The new chancellor will be Dr. Sarah Chen, former dean of sciences at MIT. She starts today." "This is outrageous." The Blackwells have treated this university as a private club for too long, I stated firmly. "That ends today. We're announcing a complete restructuring. Merit-based admissions, expanded financial aid, research partnerships with public schools. The donors will never stand for this." I smiled. "We've already secured $2 billion in new endowment funding from tech companies eager to support actual educational innovation." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Just saw the news. We need to talk." The Winston University boardroom emptied quickly after the announcement, leaving behind shocked faces and muttered threats of legal action. I remained seated, waiting for the inevitable storm that would follow. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from the Blackwell family. The first person to burst through the door wasn't William or Charles. It was Emma. She stood in the doorway, still wearing her morning yoga clothes, her hair slightly disheveled from rushing over. 5 years, she said, her voice steady. "You've been planning this for 5 years." I nodded. "Longer, actually. The teaching job was part of the research. She walked over and sat beside me. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have been able to keep it from your family? She thought for a moment. No, probably not. But not because I disagreed, because I would have been too excited about it. Before I could respond, William and Charles burst in, followed by Margaret. Their faces were various shades of purple. You duplicitous bastard, Charles shouted. Do you have any idea what you've done? Saved a failing university, I replied calmly. Your precious Winston has been dropping in rankings for years. Research grants are down 50%. Even your wealthy donors are sending their kids elsewhere. We'll fight this, William declared. Our lawyers. I've already reviewed everything. I cut in. The share acquisitions were legal. The board vote was legal. Dr. Chen's appointment is legal. Sarah Chen. Margaret nearly choked. That public education advocate. She'll destroy everything Winston stands for. Emma stood up. You mean like actual education? Merit-based admissions. Research that matters. Emma. Her mother gasped. Whose side are you on? Education's side, Emma replied firmly. Which is exactly where David's been all along. William stepped forward, his banker's mind finally engaging. How did you afford this? Teaching salary. I sold my company 5 years ago, I said. EduTech Solutions, the learning platform used by over 2,000 universities worldwide. Recognition dawned on their faces. EduTech's sale had been major news in educational circles. That was you, Charles whispered. The same platform Winston refused to adopt because it was too accessible to common students, I confirmed. The irony isn't lost on me. Margaret sank into a chair. But you live in that tiny apartment. Actually, Emma interjected, we own the building, and 3 others on that block. David showed me the paperwork this morning. You knew? William turned to his daughter. Not until today, but I've always known David was more than you gave him credit for. Just then, Dr. Sarah Chen entered the room. She was a commanding presence, brilliant, accomplished, and completely unimpressed by old money politics. Mr. Parker, she nodded to me, then turned to the Blackwells. I assume you're here about the changes. Changes? Charles sputtered. You're going to destroy this institution. Dr. Chen smiled coldly. By making it actually educate students. How terrible. She laid out a folder of documents. Here's the 5-year plan. Merit-based admissions, expanded research programs, partnerships with public schools, and yes, significantly reduced influence from certain families. William grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. This is impossible. The donors will be replaced, I said. Tech companies are eager to fund genuine innovation. We've already secured commitments triple your annual donations. But the legacy admissions, Margaret began, will be reduced to 5%, Dr. Chen stated, based solely on actual family connection to the university, not donation size. Charles slumped against the wall. Everything we built. You didn't build anything, Emma said quietly. You inherited influence and abused it. David's actually building something. The next few hours were a blur of meetings, press conferences, and damage control. The announcement hit the media like a bomb. Winston University announces revolutionary changes under new leadership. By evening, when Emma and I finally got home, social media was exploding with reactions. Old money families were outraged. Educational reformers were celebrating. Students were cautiously optimistic. You know what amazes me? Emma said as we sat on our balcony, which, as it turned out, overlooked several buildings we owned. What's that? You spent 5 years letting them mock you, underestimate you, treat you like you were beneath them. All while building something that would change everything they thought they controlled. I took her hand. I learned long ago that real change doesn't come from fighting the old system head-on. It comes from understanding it completely, then building something better. Is that why you kept teaching, even after buying the shares? Those students taught me more about what education should be than any board meeting ever could. Emma's phone buzzed. Her mother. She ignored it. They'll try to fight this, she said. They'll fail. But they're welcome to join us in building something better. She smiled. Speaking of building, Dr. Chen mentioned something about a new science center focusing on public school partnerships. The Emma Parker Center for Educational Innovation, I confirmed. If you're interested in running it. Her eyes widened. You're naming it after me. You're the one who showed me that not all privilege is corrupting. Some people use it to open doors for others. She kissed me softly. My family's going to be impossible to deal with for a while. Good thing we're good at playing the long game. The first month after the announcement was exactly as challenging as we'd expected. The Blackwell family launched a multi-pronged attack. Legal challenges, media campaigns, and social pressure. None of it worked. I stood in my new office at Winston University, watching construction begin on the Emma Parker Center for Educational Innovation. The morning sun cast long shadows across the campus quad, where students were already gathering for the first day of the new semester. The enrollment numbers are in, Dr. Chen announced, entering with a tablet. Applications are out 40% from last year. Average SAT scores are higher than ever. And here's the interesting part, socioeconomic diversity has doubled. And the legacy withdrawals? I asked, though I already knew the answer. About 200 students from traditional families chose not to attend. They've been replaced by 600 merit scholarships. Emma walked in, carrying blueprints for the new center. She'd thrown herself into the project with characteristic passion, already developing partnerships with local schools. The Whitmore family just pulled their donation, she reported, but she was smiling. 3 tech companies immediately offered to replace it with double the amount. The Whitmores were old friends of the Blackwells. Their departure was expected. How's your mother taking all this? Dr. Chen asked Emma. She's still not speaking to me. Dad, on the other hand. Emma paused. He asked for a meeting. This was unexpected. William Blackwell hadn't communicated with us since the takeover, except through lawyers. He wants to understand the new financial model, Emma continued. I think he's actually interested in how it works. I nodded. William was a banker first, after all. Numbers sometimes spoke louder than tradition. The meeting was set for lunch. William arrived precisely on time, looking uncomfortable in the modern, open-plan administrative offices that had replaced the old wood-paneled rooms. Parker. He nodded stiffly. Emma. Dad. We sat in the conference room overlooking the campus. William took out a notebook, actual paper, not digital. Show me the numbers, he said simply. For the next hour, I walked him through everything. The new financial model, the technology integration, the research partnerships. He asked sharp questions and took detailed notes. Finally, he sat back. It's sustainable, he said, sounding surprised. More than sustainable, I corrected. It's scalable. The model we're building here can be replicated at other universities. That's your real plan, isn't it? He looked at me with new understanding. Winston is just the beginning. Education shouldn't be a private club, Dad, Emma said gently. You taught me that, remember. When I was little, you used to say knowledge was power. I did, didn't I? He smiled slightly. Before I got caught up in all this. He gestured vaguely at the old campus buildings. We could use your expertise, I said carefully. The investment committee needs someone who understands both traditional and modern finance. He looked surprised. You're offering me a position. A real one, Emma emphasized. Not a ceremonial title. Actually working on making education accessible. William was quiet for a long moment. Charles will never speak to me again. Probably not, I agreed. But you'll be helping build something meaningful. He straightened his tie. When's the next committee meeting? Progress came in unexpected ways over the next few months. William's involvement brought other traditional donors around. They didn't all embrace the changes, but they began to understand them. The Emma Parker Center took shape quickly, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the old campus buildings. Emma's programs were already showing results. Test scores in partner schools were rising, and student engagement was off the charts. Your mother called. Emma told me one evening as we walked through the partially completed center. First time in 3 months. And she asked about the Christmas gala. Apparently, the society pages are more interested in our event than her traditional party. I laughed. We'd announced a scholarship fundraiser to replace the usual social elite gathering. Major tech companies and educational innovators had immediately signed up. Did you invite her? Of course. She said she'd think about it. The gala proved to be a turning point. Held in the newly completed main hall of the Emma Parker Center, it showcased everything we'd accomplished in just a few months. Students from partner schools demonstrated their projects. Research teams presented breakthrough findings. Tech leaders mingled with educators. The energy was palpable. Margaret Blackwell arrived halfway through, looking uncomfortable but curious. She watched as Emma presented the center's initial results. Partner school graduation rates up 15%, college acceptance rates doubled, student engagement metrics through the roof. This is not what I expected, Margaret admitted when Emma found her later. What did you expect, Mother? I thought you were destroying tradition. But you're building something new, aren't you? Emma linked her arm through her mother's. Want to see what we're doing with the chemistry program? These high school students are doing college-level research. Margaret hesitated, then nodded. Show me. Dr. Chen joined me as I watched them walk away. You know what the board was most worried about when you took over? She asked. What's that? That you were doing this for revenge. To show up the Blackwells, prove them wrong about the simple teacher. I smiled. And now? Now they understand. You really are just a teacher. One who happened to figure out how to fix education on a massive scale. The semester ended with unprecedented results. Winston's research output had doubled. Student performance metrics were at all-time highs. The waiting list for partnership programs was growing daily. But the real victory came in smaller moments. A first-generation college student discovering their passion for research. A public school teacher seeing their students thrive. A traditional donor understanding that change didn't mean destruction. Your father asked me something interesting today. I told Emma that evening as we watched the sunset from our office in the center. Oh. He asked if I consider advising other universities on implementing our model. She smiled. And? I told him I'd think about it. After we make sure Winston's transformation is complete. It's already transforming, she said. Look. Below us, students were gathering for an evening study session. Scholarship students mixing with legacies, public school partners working with university researchers. The old barriers were dissolving. Ready for phase 2? I asked. She looked at me. There's a phase 2. There's always a phase 2. Education never stops evolving. Good thing they underestimated that simple physics teacher, she grinned. Good thing they did. 3 years later, I stood on the stage of Winston University's graduation ceremony, watching a truly diverse class receive their diplomas. The changes we'd implemented had transformed not just the university, but the entire landscape of higher education. The Emma Parker Center had become a national model for educational innovation. 5 other major universities had adopted our program, with dozens more in talks. The Winston model, as it was now called, was revolutionizing how institutions approached education. Never thought I'd see this, William said quietly, standing beside me. You become one of our strongest advocates. using his banking connections to create new scholarship funds and research grants. On stage, Emma was preparing to give the commencement speech. She'd grown the center beyond anyone's expectations, creating a network of educational opportunities that stretched from elementary schools through postgraduate research. Distinguished guests, families, and most importantly, graduates, she began. 3 years ago, we embarked on an experiment. Many said it would fail, that education needed its barriers, its exclusivity, its traditions. I saw Margaret in the audience, sitting proudly. She'd finally come around, especially after seeing her granddaughter, born last year, playing with the children of scholarship students at the center's daycare. But you proved them wrong, Emma continued. This class represents everything we believed possible. Future scientists who started in our partner high schools, researchers who never thought they'd afford college, legacy students who learned that merit matters more than names. Charles wasn't present. He'd taken a position at another university, still clinging to the old ways. But his daughter was among the graduates, having chosen Winston specifically because of its changes. Today, you're not just graduating from Winston University. You're graduating from a new model of education, one that proves excellence and accessibility can coexist, that tradition and innovation can strengthen each other. Dr. Chen, now our Chancellor Emeritus, caught my eye from her seat. She'd announced her retirement last month, but not before helping implement our model at 3 other universities. But most importantly, Emma said, her voice strong and clear, "You're proving that change comes not from tearing down, but from building up, not from exclusion, but from inclusion, not from protecting privilege, but from extending opportunity." I thought about that first day in the boardroom, when everyone thought we were destroying Winston. Now, the university was stronger than ever. Applications were at record highs, research funding had tripled, and our graduates were among the most sought after in the country. As you leave these halls, Emma concluded, remember this: education is not a zero-sum game. Making knowledge accessible doesn't diminish its value, it multiplies it. Each of you is proof of that principle. The applause was thunderous. As I watched the graduates celebrate, I remembered my own days teaching high school physics. Those lessons in the classroom had taught me more about education than any business meeting ever could. Later, at the reception, William approached me with an interesting proposal. The banking consortium wants to create an educational investment fund, he said, using the Winston model as a template. Interested in advising? I smiled. Only if we focus on schools that want real change, not just cosmetic improvements. Already covered, he grinned. Emma helped write the criteria. Margaret joined us, bouncing my daughter Claire on her hip. Are you talking business at a graduation party? She scolded, but her eyes were twinkling. Educational innovation never sleeps, Mother, Emma said, joining our group. I looked around at my family, both blood and chosen, and at the diverse crowd of graduates and their families. This was what education should be: a gathering of minds and opportunities unrestricted by artificial barriers. So, Emma said, taking Claire from her mother, ready to tell them about Phase 3. There's a Phase 3? William and Margaret asked simultaneously. I laughed. There's always another phase. Education never stops evolving. And as I watched the sunset paint the campus in golden light, I thought about that simple physics teacher they'd once mocked. Sometimes, the best way to change the world is to let them underestimate you. After all, every good teacher knows the most important lessons are often learned when you think you're teaching something else entirely.